Last time we stopped halfway through Genesis chapter 27, so I want to start right where we left off in verse 26. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come here, my son, and kiss me." So he went to him and kissed him. When Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he blessed him and said, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed." Do you remember how we got here to this point? The story didn't start in this moment. It's been building, the whispers, the lies, the scheming in the shadows. Rebekah plotting behind her own husband's back. Jacob deceiving his aging father. A family playing games with God's promises instead of trusting in him. And finally, the moment comes. Isaac places the blessing, the inheritance, the family line, not on Esau, the firstborn, but upon Jacob. And in a twisted way, we almost want to clap, right? I mean, congratulations, Jacob. You did it. You secured the blessing. You outmaneuvered your brother. You fooled your father. You got exactly what you want. But at what cost? All it took was a web of lies, betrayal, manipulation, a son dishonoring his father, a wife undermining her husband, a family torn apart so one man could win. They gained the blessing, yes, but they lost their peace, and they're about to lose their family. And now the consequences, they start to unfold. This family already cracked by deception and divided by favoritism. It's about to shatter. And we're watching the birth of one of Scripture's most dysfunctional, pain-filled homes. It's about to break. And yet here's the hope. For every one of us who knows the ache of a broken family, for every heart that carries the scars of dysfunction and betrayal or regret, well, God is not finished. If He can work through this mess, through their sin, their fractured relationships, their generational wounds, then He can work through ours. Their story isn't a celebration of family failure. It's a testimony to a God who redeems even the most tangled, chaotic situations. Brokenness does not stop His purpose. And our sin, it doesn't cancel His grace. If anything, this moment reminds us that God writes His most powerful stories in the cracks of broken homes and broken people. But what we'll learn from this dysfunctional family is something we all need to hear. It's that walking over people to get what you want destroys relationships. So let's pick the story back up to find out what happens after Isaac blesses Jacob instead of Esau in verse 30. After Isaac finished blessing him, and Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence, his brother Esau came in from hunting. He too prepared some tasty food and brought it to his father. Then he said to him, "My father, please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your blessing." So just picture this scenario. Jacob has just walked out with the blessing still ringing in his ears. The fragrance of the meal, it's likely still hanging in the tent. I mean, victory in his pocket through deception and disguise. And right then, Esau walks in. Do you remember where he's been? He's been out in the field hunting game, doing exactly what his father asked so he could celebrate his blessing. This is supposed to be Esau's big moment. The day he had waited for, hoped for, trained for. The day he would step into his role as firstborn, heir, and leader of the family. But there had to be a bit of a knot in his stomach, right? I mean, a little uneasiness because he knew his brother. He knew Jacob's reputation, the schemer, the heel grabber, the trickster. If the Marvel Cinematic Universe had a patron saint of sibling manipulation, Jacob would be Loki. Always plotting, always maneuvering, never fully trustworthy. And yet Esau thought he could control his destiny. He thought his strength, his skill, and his father's favor would secure his future. But there was one moment he never outran, the day that he traded his birthright for a bowl of soup. I'm so short-sighted and this impulsive decision that he would regret through tears. Yet he still believed his father would bless him anyway, because Isaac, his father, loved him. Isaac favored him. Isaac was gonna choose Esau until now. In this moment, Esau returns ready to claim everything he thought was his, only to discover everything has already been claimed. Now look at something subtle in this scene, something easy to miss if you're reading quickly. Just think back to the first half of this chapter, to Jacob's lie. When he was pretending to be Esau, Isaac questioned him, well, how did you find the game so quickly? Jacob had to come up with a story fast. Remember what he said? He said, oh, the Lord your God gave me success. Well, that was a quick cover, an excuse to explain why Esau had returned so fast when Esau was supposed to be out hunting in the field. Well, that single lie meant to smooth things over. It now becomes the setup for the shock that's about to hit. Because in just a moment, the real Esau does walk through the door, exhausted from doing exactly what his father asked. And suddenly, the speed that once protected Jacob becomes the evidence that exposes truth. The lie is about to collide with reality because God did give Esau quick success. He was able to find, kill, and prepare food for his father in almost the short amount of time it took for Jacob's deception. Which leads to the question we've often asked throughout Genesis. Was Esau's speed in finding an animal, was it just an accident? Well, obviously not. There are no coincidences. Verse 32, his father Isaac asked him, who are you? Remember that Isaac is old and he's blind at this point in his life. So he asks, who are you? I am your son, he answered, your firstborn, Esau. Isaac trembled violently and said, who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came, and I blessed him. And indeed, he will be blessed. I mean, can you feel the weight of this moment? The emotion in the room, it's thick. An old man, frail, blind, and vulnerable, suddenly realizes he has been deceived, not by an enemy, not by a stranger, but by his own son, his younger, scheming mama's boy's son. Isaac begins to tremble, and not a small shiver. Scripture says he shook violently, his whole body convulsing with shock, grief, and the crushing awareness that everything has just unraveled. Decades of family tension erupting in one moment of betrayal. And don't forget what we learned. Isaac is not innocent in this. He knew God had chosen Jacob before they were born. God made it clear before the boys were even born, yet Isaac tried to resist the will of God. He tried to bend God's plan to fit his preference. Why? Because Esau, strong, impressive, hairy, Thor-like Esau, was his favorite. Isaac knew the prophecy. He knew the promise. He knew the plan. And he still tried to give the blessing to Esau. But now, in an instant, the truth hits like a lightning bolt. Not only has he been deceived, but he's been overruled by God. The trembling isn't just shock, it's a bit of surrender. It's the realization that You can certainly fight against God's will, but you can't stop it. And then layered upon it, on top of this all, is this crushing realization that it was Jacob, your tricky son, the heel catcher, the heel grabber, the schemer from the womb who did it. Your own son, the boy who always found a way to twist the story, bend the rules, and manipulate the moment. He looked you in the eyes and lied straight to your face, and you believed him. Imagine the sting of that. Not just being fooled, but being fooled by the child you raised. Not just deceived, betrayed. You trusted him. You blessed him. And he took advantage of your trust, of your blindness, your frailty, and your love. It's no wonder that Isaac shook. This wasn't just a lie. It was the kind of betrayal that breaks a father's heart. It's almost like that scene from Braveheart, when William Wallace has fought and bled and sacrificed everything for what he believed in. He believed in freedom and honor and loyalty. And then in that moment, he expects support. He turns and realizes he was betrayed by the very man who he trusted as the future King of Scotland. Do you remember his face? That look of just devastation and disbelief and heartbreak all rolled into one? The agony of realizing the person you entrusted your hope in was the one who handed you over. That moment captures just a glimpse of what Isaac feels here. But Isaac's pain, it runs far deeper, because it wasn't just a political ally who betrayed him. It wasn't just a leader or a friend. It was his own son, Jacob, deceiving him, staring into his blind father's face and lying without flinching. And worse, it was his own wife, Rebekah, partnering in the deception. Just let that sink in. Two people who should have protected him, they betrayed him. Two voices who should have covered him, they conspired against him. The very heart of his home turned against him. And Isaac isn't just shaken, he is shattered. This is betrayal at the deepest level. That's why walking over people to get what you want, it destroys relationships. Verse 34, when Esau heard his father's words, he burst out with a loud and bitter cry and said to his father, "Bless me. Me too, my father." Once again, we're staring pain in the face. But remember, this moment of agony didn't appear out of nowhere. It takes us back to that fateful exchange in Genesis 25 when Esau treated his birthright, the blessing of God, as something cheap and disposable. He traded a divine inheritance for a bowl of stew. Why? Because Esau lived by his appetite. He lived by what he could taste, touch, and feel in that moment. And hunger dictated his decisions. Urgency overshadowed eternity. He chose the comfort of right now over the promise of what God had spoken. And we said it then. That decision would haunt him for the rest of his life. The regret, the weight, the memory of that foolish choice would follow him all the way to this tent, to this heartbreak, to this moment of fury and tears. This is the pain of a man who realizes far too late that temporary desires can cost eternal blessings. Verse 35, but he said, "Your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing." Esau said, "Isn't he rightly named Jacob, heel grabber? This is the second time he has taken advantage of me. He took my birthright, and now he's taken my blessing." And we come to Jacob living up to his name, heel grabber, heel catcher, deceiver, grabbing after the heel to take what you want, living up to his reputation, living up to his name, just like Loki. Oh my goodness. It didn't have to be this way. Last time I introduced the idea of a genogram, that tool that family counselors use to map out relationships, patterns, wounds, and dysfunctions across generations. And I shared with you the Skywalker family from Star Wars, green lines for healthy relationships, red lightning bolts for conflict and brokenness. And if you remember the Skywalkers, they were a mess. Well, buckle up, because here's Abraham's family genogram, and it makes the Skywalkers look somewhat functional. It's chaos. This is not the sweet children's storybook version of the patriarchs. This is a tangle of favoritism, deceit, rivalry, manipulation, sibling conflict, and generational sin, and fractured relationships. We read about Jacob and Rebekah, their scheming, their lies, the plotting behind closed doors. And honestly, you look at this family tree and think, it's no wonder Isaac hesitated to bless Jacob. How do you trust someone who has deceived his whole life? This is messy. It's painful. It's dysfunctional. And yet, this is the family through which God chose to bring his promises to the world. Do you know why this family was so fractured? Why there was jealousy, deception, bitterness, and betrayal everywhere? It's because every member of this family, Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, Esau, they were stepping over each other to get what they wanted. They weren't walking with God. They weren't loving each other. They were walking over people, pushing, manipulating, grabbing, fighting for control, fighting for position, fighting to shape their own future instead of trusting the God who had already spoken one. This wasn't villain and three victims. Everyone played their part in the dysfunction, just like every family. When people are driven by self-interest, even in a godly household, the family stops being a place of blessing and becomes a battleground. And that's exactly what we're witnessing here. And walking over people to get what you want destroys relationships. Then Esau asked, haven't you reserved any blessing for me? Now, to be fair, this isn't the first time Jacob had gotten the upper hand on his brother. This is round 2. But don't miss this. The first time, Jacob didn't deceive Esau. He didn't trick him. He didn't dress up and sneak around or lie to anyone. What did he do? He simply took advantage of Esau's impulsive, live by your appetite, satisfy the moment foolishness. Esau wasn't thinking about legacy at that point. He wasn't thinking about God's promise. He wasn't thinking about the future. He let hunger, his senses, his feelings in the moment make his decisions for him. Then he asked, haven't you reserved any blessing for me? Isaac answered Esau, I have made him lord over you, and have made all his relatives his servants, and I have sustained him with grain and new wine. So what can I possibly do for you, my son? It's too late. The blessing, it's spoken. The leadership of the clan has already been passed to Jacob. Isaac can't rewind this moment or undo what has been done. And you can almost feel it after years of trying to push against what God has already declared. Isaac realizes something in this moment. He's been fighting a losing battle. All of his favoritism, all of his plans, all his attempt to steer the blessing towards Esau, all of it collapses in an instant. Finally, Isaac sees it. God's will, it's not something you can outmaneuver. You can resist it. You can wrestle with it. You can try to bend it to your preferences, but you cannot stop what God has spoken. This is the moment Isaac surrenders not to Jacob, but to God. Some of us don't learn through obedience. We learn through exhaustion. And Isaac didn't yield because he trusted. He yielded because God overruled. Verse 38, Esau said to his father, do you have only one blessing, my father? Bless me too, my father. Then Esau wept aloud, clearly echoed in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 17. Afterward, as you know, When he wanted to inherit this blessing, he was rejected. Even though he sought the blessing with tears, he could not change what he had done. Now look at Esau. He's pleading through tears. He's desperate, heartbroken. And Isaac, as a father, wants nothing more than to turn back time and to undo what just happened. He wants to bless his son, to give him something, just anything. But the moment he opens up his mouth, what comes out isn't a blessing, it's prophecy. And it's actually the opposite of what he said to Jacob. And this is fascinating. In the Hebrew text, the language becomes broken, fragmented, jumbled, almost stumbling over itself. It's as if Isaac is trying to speak blessing, reaching for words to comfort his son, but he can't. The words won't form. It's like his mouth is wrestling with his heart, and God's decree overpowers his desire. Isaac wants to bless Esau, but God won't allow it. His voice aligns with God's will, even when his emotions fight against it. It's a sobering picture. Human intention meets divine sovereignty, and God's purpose always stands. Now remember, Esau is still Isaac's favorite son, and he opens his mouth to console him. But out comes prophecy in verse 39. His father Isaac answered him, "Your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness." Exactly opposite of what he said to Jacob. Not anything close to what Isaac wanted to say to his son. He's not just saying, "You're not going to receive the promise." It sounds like he's cursing him to poverty, but it's not a curse. It's prophecy. Away from the dew of heaven above. You will live by the sword, and you will serve your brother. A prophecy of life of violence and submission. It's still echoing in our modern history today. But when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke from off your neck. A prophecy of rebellion, of a family completely broken. Verse 41, Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. He said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." Well, of course Esau held a grudge. In his mind, the heel catcher won. The trickster, the deceiver, Jacob got everything. And Esau's the one who paid the price. Here's the tragedy. Rebekah and Jacob, they did win, but they gained nothing God wasn't already planning to give them. God had already chosen Jacob before he ever took a breath. The blessing was his by divine promise. But instead of just waiting on God, they seized what God had already promised, and in doing so, they lost more than they gained. Yeah, they gained the birthright, but they lost their family. They secured the blessing, but shattered trust. They won and walked away with heartbreak, separation, and decades of pain and fear. Look again at the genogram, at the lightning bolts of broken relationships. This is what winning the wrong way looks like. This is what happens when we take God's plan into our own hands instead of trusting his timing. They got what they wanted, and in the process, they lost what mattered most. And I know some of you can relate to this. I can relate to this. Broken relationships, cut off relationships, family tension, infighting that goes years deep. Brothers so wounded, they refuse to speak to each other. Or worse than that, they wish harm on each other. Family can be like an onion. On the outside, everything looks fine. But start peeling back the layers, and suddenly the tears come. Layer after layer. More pain, more hurt, more wounds, more history, and more tears. And when you get down to the core of so much family brokenness, what do you find? Self-protection, pride, fear, selfishness, sinful flesh trying to win, trying to get even, trying to defend itself at any cost. People saying whatever they have to say just to be right, clinging to control, fighting over who was wrong, arguing about politics, inheritance, money, loyalty, who's on their side. And so often, it's not about truth, it's about winning. And families tear each other apart on the battlefield of I'm right. Walking over people to get what you want destroys relationships. Verse 42, when Rebekah was told what her older son Esau had said, she sent for her younger son Jacob and said to him, your brother Esau is planning to avenge himself by killing you. Congratulations, Rebekah. This was your master plan, your brilliant scheme. And what's the result? One of your sons now wants to kill his twin. This is the crash landing of taking God's promises into your own hands and forcing it in your own strength. When you decide to make God's will happen in your way, you inherit the responsibility of holding it all together. And Rebekah is learning it the hard way. She deceived her husband. She manipulated her sons. She used lies to achieve what she thought God needed help in accomplishing. And now she's trapped in the fallout, holding secrets, protecting lies, and scrambling to control consequences she never intended. And fortunately for her, Esau doesn't know that she's the mastermind behind the deception, which means she now has to carry another dark secret. But you know what she really needed in that moment? Not more plotting, not more scheming, not more manipulation. She needed to finally just surrender. Rebekah, you don't have to fix it. You don't have to protect God's promises. You don't need to hold the universe together. God already promised that Jacob would become a great nation. Esau may rage. He may threaten murder. He may plot revenge. But God's promise will stand. God will protect Jacob. God will accomplish what he said. So rest in that. Trust that. Stop trying to force what God has already secured. But instead of letting go, she tries once again to fix it in her own strength. And that's when the spiral continues in verse 43. Now then, my son, do what I say. Flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran. Stay with him for a while until your brother's fury subsides. When your brother is no longer angry with you and forgets what you did to him, I'll send word for you to come back from there. Why should I lose both of you in one day? Well, guess what, Rebekah? That's exactly what happens. The very thing she feared, the thing she tried to control and prevent, becomes her reality. She saves Jacob in the short term and loses him for the rest of her lifetime. She'll never see him again. Jacob leaves for Uncle Laban's place, and she never gets to see her beloved son. The relationship she thought she was protecting is the one she ultimately sacrifices. This is the heartbreaking irony of taking God's promise into our own hands. We often lose the very thing we're trying to save. So Rebekah's plan worked, but the cost was devastating. She secured the blessing and yet lost the son she adored. Winning her way meant losing God's peace and her family. So as we close, let's just put the genogram back on the screen. Look at this family, this chosen family, and you look at all the brokenness. Look at the lightning bolts of conflict, betrayal, and wounded hearts, relationships cut off. Isaac walked over Jacob to push his will. Rebekah walked over her husband and her son to secure her plan. Jacob walked over his father and brother to seize what he wanted. Everyone's grabbing. Everyone's protecting their own interests. Everyone's trying to control outcomes. And what's the result? Brokenness. A broken family. Broken relationships. Shattered trust. Estranged brothers. And a family scattered by pride and self-will. Now, let's just get real for a moment. If you were to draw your family genogram, what would the lightning bolts look like? Where are the fractures? Where are the secrets? Where are the wounds that still ache? Who is someone you have walked over to get what you want? Where is there distance, silence, resentment, bitterness? A brother or sister you don't talk to? A parent you avoid? A child you can't reach? A friend or family member you pushed away? And the bigger question is, what would it look like to surrender that relationship to God? To say, Lord, I can't fix this. I'm hurt. And I've probably caused a lot of hurt. And I don't have the power to repair. But whatever you ask, whatever it takes, heal this relationship and start with me. Because the lesson of this family is not just that sin breaks relationships. It's that God heals what surrender opens. Where manipulation destroys, surrender restores. So today, instead of grabbing, instead of forcing, instead of fixing, we open our hands, we humble our hearts. We say, God, I give you my family. I give you these relationships. Heal what I can't. Lead me where I don't want to go. Do in my family what only you can do. He restored Abraham's descendants, and he redeems Jacob's story. We'll find out all about that. And he can redeem your family as well.